Good morning, grade 12s. Today we are concluding our work in chapter 2 with updating records. We are not finishing chapter 2 in its entirety. It continues actually with working with classes and database manipulation. However, it is not vital for your examination, so I'm going to keep it out. I'm just going to highlight one or two things as I scroll through the textbook that I want to make you aware of, and then you may use this in your PAT, which is a good practice, but for exam purposes it is not important. And there's also something about cross forms in the end of the chapter, and again we are not going to cover this, so we will finish off database manipulation chapter 2 with Delphi code. All right, so I promise this is not going to take long. So updating records, it's exactly the same as we've done last year in grade 11. The only thing that is new-ish, but it's also not new because we've done that in previous activities, is that with linked tables we will sort the child table that we want to update with the primary key of the parent table. So that is the only difference. So in the example that they give, we select a supplier. This is the Edward Shop database. We select a supplier and the supplier ID, which is the primary key in the supplier table. And then we have an item table over here that obviously the same supplier has a lot of different products. So you can see over here, although it's a little bit blurred, we have the supplier ID is the same. So this is the foreign key in the child table. So after selecting the supplier, we will filter the item table according to the supplier ID, and then we can simply loop through this table and update its records. In this case, we update the price, I believe. Now, with SQL, we could, we haven't actually updated records with SQL, which we will still cover. However, I want to remind you that with our ADO, we set the data set state. We have to set it to edit, and then after we edit it, we have to post our changes, but we will look at it when we look at the code. So the code to select the supplier ID and to filter it looks as follows. So we have the supplier ID of the supplier table, which we will assign to our variable, and then we set the filtered property of the item table to false, and we set a filter to the item table where the supplier ID equals the supplier ID that we've received from the supplier table, and then we set the filtered property of the item table to true, and that will then display this information or these values from the supplier, from the item table. Then our loop, so we have, we first look at we count how many records are there in the item table so that we can issue a message that says how many records have actually been updated. You can do it on this in the beginning, or you can do it in the end. This number is not changing because we're not deleting anything. Then we receive the value that we want to update our cost price with, which is a percentage, and then we're looping through our item table. We set the dataset state of the table to edit. Then we are updating the cost price field of the item table, which becomes golden rule, cost price field times the increase, which is 1 plus percentage divided by 100. That's maths, you should know. And then we post. I just have to highlight this, although it's already highlighted. This post, please, every time you update, it needs to be posted. You cannot have this post on the other side of the end. Please remember, edit, make the change, and post. And then, very important, we have to call the next method of the item table to go to the next record. And then we can set the record or the cursor to the first, and we can display a message that says how many records have been updated. And that's it. So in this activity 9, you're actually going to code this. You can read the instructions. So where it says you create the program for the previous example, linking the Edward Shop database, improve the program by adding the following. I was so kind, and I have placed a finished created program in your data files on the drive. So you can find that in chapter 2, it's activity 9. But you most probably, once you've downloaded it, you will have to relink the database because it went now from my computer to the drive to your computer, etc. It is also, I believe, compressed, so just extract the files and then relink the database. Right, so activity 9, that's all I'm requiring you or expecting of you to complete. Then just one or two things about using user-defined objects in database processing. Okay, writing a class, using a class in combination with our database processing. I just want to point out that our constructor create will receive every single field or value or possible value from our fields in the database. And from there, we then can make use of these fields. So in our declaration of the, or when we initiate or instantiate the object by calling on the constructor, I'm just going to scroll down and get here over here. You can see we will now receive the values from each field in that database. And then we can make use of the other functions and we have access to all these fields. Okay, that's the one thing that I wanted to highlight. And the other thing that I want to highlight, if we actually get there, is about sharing data between forms. So we literally, and that's what OOP is all about, or object-oriented programming, where we have a unit or a class that can now be the link between various forms, because both forms have actually access to the class. So the public field with Oh, it's been a long time ago. Now I can't think of the method name. Mutator methods. So we can use mutator methods to change the fields of our class, and they contain now values, and those values can be accessed with accessor methods in other forms. So feel free in your PAT to make use of that. Okay, you just read through this and then it concludes with a activity, and that's it. And then for the remainder of the week we will look at your PAT, and then next week we will jump into chapter 3 where we'll continue with arrays. Alright guys, that concludes video lesson for today.